And APB, American Protection Bureau, voted #1 best on Long Island for all your security needs. Call 631-390-9050. That's 631-390-9050. APB.
Sir?
Ah.
Manscaped?
Uh-huh.
Have you tried the new equipment that's been sent?
I'm afraid because it says weed whacker. I'm scared.
Maven, Manscaped, what are you thinking about
Love it.
Manscaped, dude?
Love it.
What do you use it for?
Necessity. What don't I use it for? Put it this way. The only hair I have on my entire body is these eyebrows.
Yeah.
That you see. These caterpillars racing to the middle of my nose. That's it.
That is it.
That's all I have. And that's all I want.
That's the
So Manscaped is a must.
We were talking before the show. There's nothing worse than just hair.
Yeah.
Right? Hair on a woman, hair on a man. It's just bad.
Absolutely. And it's the one thing that the older I get, it starts growing more in unwanted areas.
Absolutely.
I hate it.
I'm going to ask you a question.
Uh-oh.
Just going to go out there.
Oh, boy.
Go for it.
You're doing a deed.
Yes.
Again, I don't want you to have to admit this because we, as men, we try not to admit this. But if you're going to go do the deed on a woman, would you rather have her be hairless or a little hair, racing stripe, or
Racing stripe.
full retro bush?
Racing stripe.
Retro Bush is out.
Yes, thank you.
Retro Bush is out.
Yeah.
I don't mind a small, well-manicured landing strip. Every now and then, if it's completely, and I'm talking like baby's ass bald, then I start, where is that pedophilia line? I don't want to wander into that.
That's very
Thought of it like
interesting.
that.
I never thought about that. You're a smart dude. Holy shit.
So if the landing strip is clean enough for the plane to go in smoothly, you're cool with that?
If the landing strip has, like I said, well manicured,
Yeah,
you can see both sides. It's not
Like blinking lights on both sides of that
I
landing?
just don't. I don't want. I don't want the shrubbery going off into unwanted areas on that. As well.
Gotcha. Oh, look what you found. Ooh.
I got to be all honest though. Hey, the older I get though, I don't think I can be as
I found it!
Have you ever gone down there and she slowly brings down the underwear? Then
What is
retro? Just,
Absolutely.
you're like, whoa!
Wow,
Yeah, I'm
like
46,
it
of
pops
course.
out?
Do you walk out or what do you do?
No, I muster through. I muster up the courage to get
He's
through.
a trooper. He's a trooper. Gotta give him an A.
Not all heroes wear capes.
Yeah,
There you go.
I hear you.
There you
Listen,
go.
I couldn't
Super
say.
Bush.
I couldn't say it. Well, if you have the same beliefs as Maven does, Manscaped could help you.
Absolutely.
The weed whacker.
Absolutely.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking that I may have to, go in a room, close the door, and hang out with the weed whacker for a little while.
Yeah, I think you're a retro guy, aren't you?
I like 70s adult films, if that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
but
only
with that,
Ron
we're going to take a
Jeremy,
quick
Batman.
commercial break, and we'll be
Anyway.
back with this wrestling icon, Maven.
Seems like a long time ago since Marty Jannetty punched me in the face, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, it's been a little while.
Welcoming the great legend, Brian Adias. How are you, sir?
And what did you do to make Marty Jannetty punch you?
Jimmy.
Let me guess, you were talking when you should have been listening.
Well, I'll give you the short of it. Marty was brought in to do a signing. This is real early on in the show. We were just starting, trying to learn a little bit about the business. And Marty did some Marty Jannetty things, like maybe stuff that we did when we were younger, but at Marty Jannetty's age. And Jimmy and I weren't happy about it. And then we continued to talk about it on the show quite often. And then when he came back on, he punched me in the face. And there you are. There's your answer.
Good enough.
How are you doing, man? How are you feeling?
Man, to tell you the truth, I'm feeling great right now. But in December, I was in the hospital for, a couple of weeks. I had gotten a bad bacterial infection in my lower intestine, and it's called C. diff. It's, make a long story short, I had a bad tooth. I took some antibiotics to get it under control. They weren't working, so they gave me some stronger antibiotics. Fast forward, I had my hip replaced. They gave me antibiotics. So this thing that I got called C. diff, when you take too many antibiotics, it kills the good bacteria in your, basically in your colon. And that's what happened. And man, I lost 30 pounds, dude. So
Jeez.
it was.
Have you ever heard of that before this?
I had not heard of it. You see all the, I feel for these people now where you see all the commercials for ulcerative colitis and all. You see that, you see all the commercials for the probiotics and all that. That's exactly what these people, some people have this stuff 24/7 and it's with them, like Crohn's disease, basically.
Yeah, sure.
It's the same, basically the same thing as UC. But I had this bad attack where it just destroys you, man. Like I said, I lost 30 pounds, man. I hadn't weighed below 200 pounds since I was in high school, So
I got to ask you though. So you had a bad tooth, what, like a cavity or an infection?
No, it cracked. I just had it cracked. So I went to the dentist and he said, all right, we're going to put you on antibiotics, get it under control before we take it out, because there's nothing they could do because it was cracked long ways, vertical crack. And so I had happened before. I've had a couple. Getting older now, you have some bad teeth, lose a tooth here and there. But I've had it done before. But this one was just hanging on. It was still hurting. Even when I had the tooth out, it was still hurting. You know what I mean? But down in just a hole in my jaw that was hurting. So he gave me these stronger. Turns out the clindamycin that he gave me the second go round is the worst antibiotic to get C. diff, this bacterial infection in your gut. So moving forward, beware the antibiotics you're taking and how many you're taking, because it can. I've never been so sick in my life, man. So.
And how long was this for?
What's that?
How long was this for?
Oh man, I was in the. I went to the emergency room twice. First time and here's the deal, they gave me antibiotics. Thinking it was diverticulitis, and it wasn't. So it was just a storm of the utmost proportion, the wrong, perfect storm, the wrong way. You know what I mean? It just destroyed. And I still right now, right down here in your lower abdomen on the left side, it still feels tight even after. There's only one antibiotic they can give you for it, man. But the third day they gave me that antibiotic, I could feel it getting better. But man, I'm gonna text you a picture of me when I was in the hospital, dude. I looked like I was 100 years old.
My God.
Yeah, it's bad. So I mean, I look so much better. I'm still a little bit 10 pounds lighter than I was when I got sick, but I'm slowly gaining it.
Well, I was going to say, Brian, you actually look really good. I mean, you look great last time we saw you,
well,
but you look great. You look like you're trim and in great shape. So
yeah,
but you always keep yourself in good shape. So
yeah, I've been fortunate too. I've got pretty good genetics. So I eat right about 75% of the time, and then the other time I just eat what I want. But genetics is more. But I do train. I ride an elliptical every day and try to stay in shape. So I'm getting ready to be 65. So
it's going to sound strange coming from me, but be glad it wasn't diverticulitis. I suffered with ulcerative colitis for a quarter of a century, and then my intestines snapped in half, and they had to take out 18 inches. And
so
yeah, I know all about it. And you're permanently changed after that operation. Yeah. It's never been quite the same, but we do what we do to keep carrying on. You know? You look great.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Like I said, if you'd seen me right at Christmas time, it was. Yeah. I'll send you a picture, man.
Yeah, please.
Literally, I look, and the Pharaoh will be able to he'll see this picture and realize exactly he would probably look the same way. So
yep, it was bad. And I'm not a big guy like you.
You can't eat.
Yeah, I shriveled up into nothing.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, when I was put something in my mouth was like real, like sore.
Yeah,
and your swallowing mechanism.
Were you afraid? Were you afraid to eat after everything you went through? Because I was. After my operation and my recovery, I was scared to eat because what goes in must come out.
Yeah.
So I was actually quite terrified of it. Did you have any fears about eating afterwards?
Really, they started me off on the broth, so I was just sucking through a straw, and then But to answer your question, no, because I was so hungry by then. By the time I started getting better, I couldn't eat very much, though. I would only eat probably a quarter of what I would normally eat, and I'd have to really work to get it down. But like I said, I was so hungry. But now I didn't have any fear. I guess a couple of things that normally would give you problems, I would eat just a little bit. Anything like dairy, like sour cream, and I ate some of that last night for the first time and just do a little bit at first to see how it's going to treat your body. But yeah, it damn sure makes you more aware of what you're putting in your mouth. That's for sure.
Was there any point, Brian, that you thought maybe this could be the end?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Monica was there with me the whole time. She never, with the exception of running over to the house and taking a shower and getting some clean clothes on and stuff like that, she never left. And of course, she didn't say anything. She didn't want to tell me. I already knew because she was real scared. When I had my hip out in November, I actually had an event where my blood pressure shot way up to like stroke level, and I had like 30 people in my room, and like I said, in November. Turns out that was the beginning of this C. diff. We didn't know it at the time, but it was flaring up and making my blood pressure go up. And I mean, when you got 30 people in your room running around with all these machines and stuff, it's scary, Yeah. So they don't bring the crash team in there to the rapid response team in when when there's nothing wrong. So I was scared. It scared me, but I try to stay positive and just move on. And they always say your attitude when you get something real bad like that, you're staying moving forward and being positive is a big thing. So that's what I tried to do. So.
Or you could tell the truth and say that, like, when you're ready to go, you're like, all right, I'm done, I'm heading out. And then you find out all these doctors are hitting on your wife. You're like, screw this. I'm surviving this one.
I'm not ready to give her up yet.
I'm not ready yet, but I let that go.
Yeah.
Speaking of hot wives, in the news, Bill Belichick's girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, reveals her first love note from Bill Belichick. What are you guys thinking about this? Bill Belichick and this chick. Is it all about money, guys, or what do you think's happening here?
Oh, well, he's 70-something years old, and he's not the best-looking guy in the world, but he's been making $20 million a year or whatever for the last 15 years, so it's got to come into play a little bit. So
a little bit. Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
I don't know, man. You hit it on the head. He is not a very good-looking guy. I don't know.
Oh, come on. It's his
heck of a
personality.
Heck of a coach, but
yeah.
Is he really a heck of a coach, though?
Yes.
If you have Tom Brady as your quarterback, that still makes you a heck of a coach.
No. He had a lot to do with that.
One person on your team is not enough people to make a dynasty. Did he help tremendously? Absolutely. But Belichick could take these average NFL players, if there is such a thing, no big superstars, and make them play together and win. I mean, that was a proven fact. I wasn't a Patriots fan, but he put together some of the best teams ever. And hey, you won more Super Bowls than anybody else, so it's doing something right.
I don't know, man. I hate talking about those New England Patriots, Jimmy. It's not good.
How about weren't y'all Jets fans? Y'all asked me about the Jets.
What do you want to? You want to talk about that? We'll talk about that all day.
Wait, let me go take a pack of Tums. I'll be right back. Talk about the Jets.
Thanks for bringing that up, huh, Brian?
Yeah.
You ain't kidding, man. Talk about another lost season. Jimmy and I were all. I find like I usually don't buy in, right? I've dealt with it, but Jimmy is so positive.
Oh, I am not.
And he
lying.
got me into this, and I was
am
all
not.
ready. And what a disaster!
No.
Yet another disaster.
All right, hey Jimmy, he was kicking and screaming when you were dragging him in there, right? So he didn't want to do it.
Yeah. I have to force him to root for them for the last half a century.
Hey, whatever.
Yeah. Same old Jets. Complete
another
torture.
news item before we get into it. Teacher has sexual relationships with a special needs student. Asks him to bring a gun to school and shoot a colleague. A twisted Colorado teacher who started a sexual relationship with a special needs student sent thousands of messages and ordered him to bring a gun in to kill one of her colleagues, either with the gun or some fentanyl.
Wow.
What do you think about that, guys?
Boy, you talk about vindictive, man. Jesus. Hey, where were all these hot chicks, all these teachers, these 20-something-year-old teachers? They're all white. They're all smoking hot. Where were these teachers when I was in school?
Thank you, Brian.
I had these big, fat women that were 5 foot tall and weighed 250.
Wow.
And,
I bet you paid attention.
Where are these women when I was in school?
Oh.
Wouldn't that be the dream? Like whenever I hear like, oh, they took advantage, that teacher took advantage of my son, man. I'm like,
yeah,
I could have been taken advantage of every day, all day. Who cares?
Pick me.
You ain't kidding.
Oh boy.
We're not right, are we, buddy?
No, we aren't. But you know what? At least we tell the truth.
we had two good-looking female teachers over the course of 6th grade. You realize that, Mike, right?
Really?
And they both taught the foreign language classes, and I don't know if there's a connection.
Forgot. Jimmy always brings back my memory. I don't remember the Italian teacher, right? The Italian.
It was Robalato and Eberhardt.
Well, don't say that name's on air, Jimmy.
Eberhardt needed a back brace for her boobs because they were so big, and Robalato was as tight as a snare drum. Yeah, that's what I.
My
but
God.
We were 14 years old, Mike. What are you even talking about here? Hey.
Brian,
y'all known each other since grade school and all that?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Kind of like me and Carrie, huh? We started 1st grade together.
There you go.
Yeah. Did you and Kerry hang out like the whole time? Like Jimmy and I had a long break, right? Like from each other.
Carrie and I
like how you put that.
Carrie and I, when we became friends, about halfway through 1st grade, we spent more time together. And man, going over to their place was like going to Disneyland, man. I mean, they had big catfish pond. We dove hunt, quail hunt, duck hunt. I mean, it was like a wildlife refuge. And me and Carrie we hit it off really well. We started when we started lifting weights. We were super tight up until basically when we got out of high school. We didn't see each other as much, but on the weekends when he would come back from University of Houston and I would come home from UTA, we still hung out together. So really, before we started wrestling, we hung out so much that Fritz and Doris called me their 6th son. You know what I mean? So it's like I was one of their sons, so.
Well, it's funny, Brian, I got this, this Von Erich family album, right? But I was looking, I guess through eBay. There was a wedding album, your wedding album, I think. It's out there for like $50,000, like your actual wedding album.
Mine
you married before? I thought it was yours. Maybe it could have been Kerry's. But it's definitely you and Kerry's. A whole bunch of pictures of you and Kerry. Sunglasses on, a whole bunch of stuff going on.
I don't know. Send it to me.
I will. So let me ask you, what did you think about the Iron Claw?
I thought it was, Fritz started that way back in the 50s. I think it's like any other big finishing move that you can, as a baby face, they can hold the claw up like that. People just went nuts, so, and, it looked, people didn't ever know it was a work because most people got juice from it, or that you if you're going to get the claw put on you, you're going to get juice. You know what I mean? So I thought it was great. I thought it was just something that was bigger than life with Fritz doing it, then the next generation of the boys. So I think where it cut off, Kevin, David, and Kerry used the claw, but when Mike came around and stuff, it just wasn't as, believable as it was from the dudes that were built and all that. Don't get me wrong, I love Mike and I worked the program with him. I turned heel on him, so great kid, but he never was into it. You got to draw the line somewhere of, it's a work, but still got to be into people's minds. Got to have a little bit of believability. You know what I mean? So.
Well, let me ask you this: what did you think about the movie that came out about? Did you get to watch the Iron Claw movie?
I didn't. It's typical Hollywood. The sad thing about that dude that produced that and that director, he never even talked to Kevin until the movie was completely made. They had shot the whole movie before he even spoke to Kevin. So this was all his. When you see something in Hollywood says, "Oh, based on a true story," that's about the only thing it is, because they spend their Hollywood. Now, here's the good thing about it. Let me go back. It really burnt my hide the way they portrayed Fritz. They portrayed him like a monster and is just, pushing them boys and all that. Nobody loved their kids more than Fritz Von Erich loved those boys. So, you know what I mean? Literally, I was there behind the scenes. Man, every time they would go somewhere, they hugged and, told each other they loved each other. So that crap in the movie pissed me off about the way they portrayed Fritz. And, Kevin's wife, Pam, they portrayed her like a arena rat, like a groupie. And that was the farthest thing. I went to school with Pam, she was a year younger than me. And Kevin had to chase her for 2 years before she even went out with him. So, but I think the good side of it, I think it brought the Von Erichs back in the light, you know what I mean, in the limelight a little bit, and people that didn't know anything about them got to see something of, a facsimile of what happened back in the day, So I think it brought them. The good thing was it brought them back. The bad thing was they didn't follow the storyline whatsoever. So
was there any level of strictness from Fritz from what you saw in real life? I mean, was there any element of truth? Because it's true, they made him look like a monster, but was he strict with his kids at least? I mean, where does the exaggerations come from? I know it's Hollywood being Hollywood, obviously, but was he strict?
He was strict. I think he expected his boys to say yes sir and no sir to him and all the other adults. But being strict, like, yelling and screaming at them and whipping them with a belt every other turn, that he just didn't do that. He demanded respect, but it's like you gave him the respect simply because of who he was. And you say, you're going to do this. And, but he was no harder on his boys than any other parent. That he expected a lot out of them. Don't get me wrong. You're Fritz Von Erich's kid. You better act right. I tell you what, if they didn't act right in public or whatever, they would pay the price. You know what I mean?
Was he hard on you, Brian? Because I know you said
he was rough on me too. He'd talk shit to me and yell at me just like he would them. But he said later, I'll never forget it. When I graduated high school, he wrote me a deal on his stationery from the Sportatorium. And he said, Brian, our sixth son, and talked about how I've become a great athlete. And, he's really proud of me and everything. That's the other side of him, that he would be what some people might call rough on you because he was big and gruff, but he was doing it for a reason. He was doing it to make you better. Like if you had a coach in high school or whatever that was, they saw something in you, knew you were a good athlete, and they rode you and expected more out of you than they did everybody else. It was because they saw something in you. It wasn't because they hated you and being mean to you. They were teaching you how to become better. And I think that's what happened with the boys. I think he maybe expected more out of him, but he got more out of him.
Do you think that the film accurately portrayed the brothers? Was because in the film it gives the impression that Kevin is the sane one, the good one, the angel, compared to the other boys. Was the portrayal of the brothers themselves anywhat accurate in any degree?
I think maybe somewhat. Kevin, he was the. I don't know if he of course nobody was an angel, but I think Kevin would. Of David and Carrie it was somewhat real, followed the storyline of what really happened, but a bunch of it, it wasn't, you know what I mean? It was, but Hollywood, Hollywood is not about telling it wasn't a documentary. Okay. So there's a difference between a documentary and a made for big screen movie. And they did all the stuff to hype up stuff that Hollywood does, but, like the thing with Kevin and Pam, he took her out to the truck and had sex with her the first time they met and all that. That was just, I mean, how would that, if you were married for 40 years and somebody said that about your wife, how would you feel when it was just not true?
That's a really good point. Let me ask you this. When I watched the movie, I felt like the Von Erich story of their family could stand alone. I felt like there was too much wrestling. I felt like they could have really told a really good story, but they felt like they had to get in 35 minutes of wrestling between Harley Race and Ric Flair. I was like, there's no need for this. What do you think?
Right. I agree. I agree 100%. It's the wrestling was a given, you know what I mean? And the actors actually did a pretty good job in their portrayal of the moves and stuff. I was kind of impressed about how good the moves looked and stuff, for the movie. But you don't have to put all that, like they were talking like Kevin, and the world title, and all that Kevin couldn't do promos and David had to step in. That was garbage. I mean, he wasn't the best mic man in the business, but David never had to step in and do, promos for Kevin.
So they took a lot of liberties with the film. Obviously.
They did, and that's Hollywood for you.
Yep.
Well, so let me ask you this: how do you put the movie together and not even talk to the guy that's the main star before you when you finish the movie, and then he talked to Kevin later?
Yeah.
I'll say this: when I actually went to the movies, and I hadn't been to the movies. Right, we had COVID and everything. I got like years, and when I went there, I hated it. I was like, I just hated it. But I've watched it probably 800 times now.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say, they did a good job communicating how much the boys loved each other. I thought.
Yeah.
I took that home, and I thought there was some solid messages there. What do you think?
I agree. When I watched it the first time, I was hot. I was actually not furious, but it made me realize how much Hollywood will spend something. You know what I mean? But I agree that it did portray the boys and how much they did care about each other. And you might call it BS, but they love the fans too. It wasn't something that, hey, we love you fans. Their dad instilled in them, those fans are what make you. If you don't believe it, try doing something else. But those fans, without the fans, you have nothing. You know
what, Brian? It's funny. I was just thinking about that because I actually met Kevin for the first time, I think about a year ago, and he was such a gentleman. Literally took about 20 minutes talking to me.
Yeah.
And even speaking to you, the respect you have, you guys from WCCW, that must be true that Fritz really instilled in you guys how important the fans were.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I remember Fritz even saying we knew it ourselves, and you have to, without those people buying tickets and coming to see you at week in and week out, like Fort Worth and Dallas, our two shows that showed every week. Without that and the television, you at some point you have to realize that without those people buying tickets, I mean, that's your income. That's your portrayal of being over and, over as a baby face or over as a heel. Your TV show is where you do everything to send out to the masses to get people to sit in the seats and buy tickets. But because every now and then Kerry or one of the boys would say something negative about the groupies and all that. And Fritz said, I don't want to hear you talking about the groupies and everything. He said, those girls come and buy tickets every week. So don't do anything to offend them. If you want to talk behind when it's just you guys is one thing, but if you're ever in public or doing something that people are going to see, don't you ever talk about the wrestling fans and the groupies, because they make you. And I think that instilled in me as well, so, but it's true.
Brian, why do you think that's, well, I'm not sure you're even aware, but why do you think that that's not a trait that some of today's wrestlers have with their attitude towards fans? Because some wrestlers say fans don't have the right to use any wrestling terms and they're not in the business. Look, we know we're not in the business, but what do you think about wrestlers who go on record against fans and their rights to have an opinion on the sport they love?
I think they're these days when people get signed up on a contract, so they're going to get paid no matter what. And I think a lot of these guys right now, they think they're way up here because of what the promotion has done with them. But you could go from hero to zero real quick if the office wanted to destroy you and beat you every week on television and make you back down to nothing. They could do it. But I think these guys are just nearsighted and they don't understand how the business really was, driving up and down the road 7 days a week like we did it before. I think the respect, I don't think they have as much respect growing up in their era as we did growing up in our era in general. And I think it shows in their mouth, and they think they're all that when you're nothing more than what somebody has made you. So you got to do the work. Don't get me wrong. And you got to be able to get over. You have to be able to carry the load. But the respect level, if you're going to go up there and talk crap about the people that are coming to shows and paying money to get in these days, what, $100,000-$200,000 a ticket?
Yeah, it's like that.
Got somebody that's paying $1,000 to sit out there and watch everybody. You're insane. I think that's just, if I was running that promotion, that wouldn't happen. Or if it did happen, you wouldn't be working for me.
Brian, I want to bring it back to Mike a little bit. In the movie, they pretty much showed that Mike really just wanted to play music and he was kind of forced into the wrestling. Is that true?
I don't know if he was forced in it. I think it was more, I don't know if he felt obligated and did it out of for the love of his brothers too, and wanted to be, he wanted to get in on the deal too. I think the music and the guitar playing was what he really wanted to do. But I think growing up in that family, I think he felt an obligation to do it. And he put the obligation before his personal beliefs and his, what he wanted to do. So.
You saw all three brothers pass, right, at some point.
Four of them.
Four, so yeah.
David, Mike, Kerry, and Chris.
And Chris.
9 years. 9 years I buried four of them.
Can you share some of those moments on like what happened and what you were feeling and what the family was feeling? Was it just this downhill slide? Like what was that feeling?
Well, David died in '84 in Japan. I think that was the biggest, I don't know if you could say shock, but the way it happened, him being in another country and getting a call from Japan and saying, hey, David died. It was this huge shock. And, but later on with Mike, it's kind of like, the people that, in world class and all that, like me and David Manning, have been good friends all this time. And he was in the office with Fritz. It's almost, he didn't say this, but it's a given, like you almost could see it coming. You know what I mean? But Mike went through all that stuff where he had that toxic shock in his shoulder, made that huge comeback and was on his deathbed. And then to turn around and, commit suicide, it was almost like he was given a second chance at life, and just something was really wrong when you've been given a second chance like that and then you take your own life. There's something deeper than what we knew. You know what I mean? It's going on in Mike's. Kerry, and Chris, I wasn't that shocked because, Chris wanted to, more than anything, wanted to be a wrestler. And, he was 5'6" and weighed 160 pounds and just wasn't, other than being a Von Erich, he just wasn't what it took to be a professional wrestler. And it wasn't as big a shock with Mike and Chris as it was with David and so much with me and Kerry, but because Kerry took his own life. I talked to him the day before. And picture this. If y'all woke up tomorrow morning and 2:00 in the afternoon, a bulletin comes on and said, Brian Adias shot himself. Y'all would say, man, I just talked to him last night and he was, that's the way I viewed Kerry. I talked to him the day before, upbeat, didn't portray anything as being wrong. I mean, literally, not even an inkling. And then the next day I was driving down the road, literally the exit that you take off the highway to go back to their farm, it come on. It said, breaking news, Kerry Von Erich has shot himself. And I was like, it wouldn't register. It was almost like, when your ears start ringing and it's like you're numb and time slows down to just still. And I was literally like a half a mile from the exit. So I took the exit and went out there. I mean, they were all still there. Cops, they hadn't moved him yet or nothing. I mean, it was like I got there probably 30 minutes after it happened, and they had a tarp over Kerry, and Fritz was there and everything. And I remember looking at Fritz, and standing there talking to him, and man, he was just broken. You know what I mean? I mean, literally. Of course, I saw him when all the other three, saw him when it happened, come over before the funerals on everything, and then see him at the funeral. But when Kerry is like the fourth one in 9 years, he was literally just looked broken, and I obviously, but then he blamed himself for not knowing Kerry was going back there to do it, so, and then he lived with that all, the rest of his days. That happened in 93 and he passed away in 97, but I think he went to his grave thinking if he could have got to Kerry and talked to him, he could have prevented it, so that's, having to live with that's tough.
And how about the mother? The mother, was she just just lost at that point?
She's a strong lady, man. Doris was something that my mom and Doris were great friends, because Kerry and I were together, before I got driving, my mom had to bring me over to their house and pick me up and all that. But my mom would talk to Doris, and my mom used to say, man, after the fourth one, Kerry, she said, Ryan, I feel so sorry for her that I don't even know how she does, birthdays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all the days that mean something, when you're with children and all that. My mom just said she just didn't know how she did it and they lost Jackie when he was young, the oldest one, so she lost 5 out of 6 kids.
Did she blame Fritz?
I don't think she blamed Fritz. A lot of people say that. I think that it was easy to blame the wrestling side of it because of the fame and what the boys went through, having to carry the load of the fame and all that. That can be tough. I remember I was just a kid, middle-class kid growing up. We had money enough to buy everything we needed, but we weren't, wealthy by any. And then when I went into wrestling and started making this money, it's you have to adapt to that. It's real easy to get a big head and, hey, I'm all this, I'm making this money, I'm driving a Corvette and I got the world by the balls, but then a couple things happen or whatever in your life, and you start reeling yourself in and realize that you're not all that after all, that, you're human, and you better stay inside the lines. You know what I mean? Or you could start believing in your own gimmick. You know what I mean? And detach.
Do you ever think back if Kerry just would have known how beautiful his daughters turned out? Like, if he could have just, because look at, I'm showing a picture of the two daughters, how incredibly beautiful and great people they are. That's got to be tough, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I talk to Holly, and I communicate. I don't say real regular, but every now and then we text each other and see how everything's going and all that. But I mean, even if they wouldn't turn out to be beautiful, your daughters are your daughters. And I mean, him and Holly were inseparable when he was alive. She was just, you see all these pictures, she's attached to him nearly, but him and Lacey they were close too, but not like him and Holly. And I know Holly still has a rough time. I could be talking to Holly, and she gets emotional when I'd tell her some good times that me and Kerry had, and she just like, God, it's like he's here when you're telling the story because you were there with him, and it hurt them so deeply, they started thinking, what's wrong with them? They thought something was wrong with them, that Kerry killed herself, like they weren't good enough daughters or whatever.
It's amazing you bring this up, because they had that Von Erich podcast. Do you know what happened to that thing?
I don't. I know her and Kristen, Kevin's daughter, were doing it. I don't know if it got to be too much of a drag. They got kids and all this other stuff, but I don't. To tell you the truth, I don't have the answer to that. I don't know why.
Well, because I saw you on there and you were incredible, right, as always, right? So I'm a big Von Erich fan, so I was thinking to myself, oh, what happened to that podcast? All right, but I want to move on. Bill Mercer, can you tell us a little about Bill?
Oh man, what a great guy! He's a legend in Dallas radio and the TV. Our show at Channel 39 and all that. He's still alive. He lives in North Carolina. He was actually here in Dallas a couple of months ago, and I missed him, man. So I'd really like to, if I'm keeping up with him. Matter of fact, I'm going to get his phone number and call him. I know a couple of guys that I'm so sorry that I missed him in person, but what an incredible man. He taught at North Texas. He taught radio and TV communications at North Texas forever. He was just the ultimate, and the nice guy, and the way his voice and everything, it was just part of that Channel 39 show that went all over the world,
Mike, you out there? I think we lost Mike.
Okay. Yeah, I don't see him. So
no, I'm here. I'm sorry, guys.
There he is.
Look, I knew you were down there. I want to ask you a few things that have been going on within the wrestling world and get your opinion. Recently, WWE moved to Netflix. I'm assuming you're aware. Maybe you're not.
I wasn't even aware of it.
So they moved, and Hulk Hogan came out for the first episode and clearly got booed for, I guess, either what his political views or maybe some racial comments he might have said about 20 years ago. The question's more political. Do you think there's room for politics in sports, or do you think as a country we're just getting too confused on what we're supposed to be doing here? I don't know if I'm stating the question right.
No, I know exactly what you're saying. I would love for sports to be sports and politics to be politics, and there's no in between. What party that I'm associated with has absolutely nothing to do with my wrestling career, and but hey, like if Hulk Hogan, I love it that he stands up for what he believes in. With Trump being a Trump believer, the people in this country voted. You know, it wasn't like Trump just stole an election. He won by millions and millions of votes. The people wanted change, so the people of this country voted for Donald Trump. And if you don't like that, that's just tough, you know, because the majority spoke. Nobody was complaining when Joe Biden won it 4 years ago. You know, wasn't no big deal then, but now then, Donald Trump's just about done more in the first 30 days than Biden did in 4 years. So the people, it looks like the government is going back to the people. When you got a guy that steps up like that says, this is what I'm going to do, and now he's doing it. I mean, if you don't understand that, or you're against them trying to find all this money that's being wasted, you're screaming about him and trying to get the waste out, there's something wrong. And why would you be going against the government wanting to save money?
Brian,
you're in the background getting paid, you know.
I also find it funny that particular take from the other side. If you look at the math of it, we're going into a 17th year here. Over the last 16 years, 12 of the 16 have been democratically run, yet somehow Trump is the responsible one for the last almost 20 years worth of garbage when he's trying to clean it up. I think accountability is a word that we seem to be avoiding from a certain perspective.
Man. That's crazy. I don't understand, you know, of course, it's not my job to try to understand people's logic and everything. And that's why I try to keep, you know, I try to use logic as my guide. And if, you know, he got voted in. So just learn, you know, you're not going to change it. Like there's all these congressmen and women are in the streets doing these things, calling him names like first graders and stuff. What does that make you look like to the people that do like you? And what does that make you look like as an adult? Just, you know, like calling him names and stuff like that. Man, I quit that stuff in grade school, you know?
Yeah.
How about let's say the Hogan booing and them running him out of stadium has nothing to do with his political views, and it has to do with some racial comments he said about 15, 20 years ago. Again, I might have the time wrong. Jimmy, always correct me. But he did apologize for. What do you think about today's society that just doesn't let things go, especially on simple words?
Well, everybody's a victim, you know. So if you can play that victim, they're thinking that if I can be victimized, I have a say so, and you owe me, you know. Now that I'm been a victim, you owe me, and you need to make it right. And they get all this like camera time or whatever when, you know, so let it go. Let's move on. It's terrible how our two parties fight each other in DC and don't ever get any. It's like stalemate. You know, all they do is fight each other and never get anything done. That's not what our forefathers thought. I don't think they wanted people to get in there now and be able to talk about your differences. If you don't have the same opinion as this group does, you just as adults, much less politicians, if you can't get together and talk about your differences and come to a conclusion, we have nothing. And that's basically where we've been, just this dragging in the mud and not ever getting anything done. Like when there's a vote and it's all party line, you got Republicans, all of them voted this and Democrats voted this. Are you telling me that if you're voting against it, is there not one good thing that's happened with this vote that you could vote for? You know what I mean? It blows my mind that we've got these people fighting each other in our country. So
they say somewhere in between lies the truth, and nowadays there's no in between. There's no meat in the middle. It's my side or your side. It's Jets Giants. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. Some things I don't understand, and I don't want to get in the middle of it. But if somebody said something 15 years ago What about the people that are claiming to be victims? What are they saying? You know, they can say anything they want, but you have to accept what they're saying, but they don't have to accept what you're saying. So because I'm a victim, and you have to put me at the forefront because you've wronged me and now you owe me.
What about simple logic? You know, like for example, you have for the last bunch of years millions of dollars being given to terrorist organizations by our country.
Oh yeah.
What are we isn't this a common sense thing? This shouldn't be my side or your side. Terrorists are terrorists. They should be eliminated. You shouldn't be funding them. Why is this even like being ignored? I'm like, to me, that's an important point. And everybody should be on the same page as Americans when it comes to that. You don't give money to terrorists.
No.
What are we doing?
You don't give money to these things in other countries that have absolutely nothing to do with our country, like this USAID, all this money they're finding on these programs that are just ridiculous, man. Look how many billions with a B that we've given Ukraine. You know what I mean? I mean, billions, nearly approaching, I don't even know, maybe a $500 billion. And they're saying, hey, we need 100 billion more. They're just like, hey, we need this like it's $20. Hey, I need to borrow $20 till Friday. They're saying we need 100 billion more. And he's getting ready to cut that out too. He'll have this war shut off within a month or so.
Who's the warmonger after all, when you think about it?
Oh God. It's just, when one side's talking about, I don't know, I can't. It blows my mind.
We might be here for a while.
I don't understand it, and if I can't understand it, I don't even want to waste my time thinking about it. So
that's right. All right, moving on to this. The Feds, yesterday it was announced, the Feds dropped the probe into whether WWE boss Vince McMahon covered up sexual misconduct allegations. His lawyer says the charges have been dropped, and now we just have the sexual misconduct that he's being sued over by Janelle Grant. Can you guys weigh in on this? And I guess I want to direct you towards back to the country again. Instead of being innocent before proven guilty, it seems like everybody is guilty before being innocent. Thoughts?
Well, if you're a Republican, you're guilty until proven innocent. If you're a Democrat, it's the other way around. So it's like the way the DOJ weaponized political weaponization of the DOJ this last 4 years, and that's the worst thing you could ever do is make the Department of Justice where if you're not one side or the other, you're going to get charges. That's just insane. Those people should be held accountable. Well, Pam Bondi's jumping up and charging that governor of New York. She charged her with interfering with federal stuff already, and she's going to hold people accountable, which is great. But like the deal with McMahon, I haven't even really kept up with it. I haven't watched WWE or read anything about it.
I don't think it's a point about watching WWE, but let me ask you this question. If you get involved with a woman and whatever you do in the bedroom, whether you feel if we feel it's immoral or whatever they're doing, it's a decision between two adults. Eventually there's money exchanged. Do you think a person has a right then to go back and start claiming all these things after you've taken millions of dollars for services rendered?
Well, unfortunately, that's how our system works. You got a super rich man, and then this woman hooks up with him and does whatever. Maybe she let him do all that stuff, and at the time it was okay. But now then it's time to get paid after everything settles, and that's the way our country works. Everything is settled in a court of law. There's nothing that could be settled between two people anymore, you know. And
what if the accuser, if they switched the law somehow to adjust it, where the accuser is found to not be telling a truthful side of the story if the accuser is held accountable for even bringing up the matter and wasting our court, time and our taxpayer dollars. Any thoughts on that?
I think if it's proven that they have done this on and lied about it or whatever, they should be charged. Why not? If you're lying, you can't lie in a court. That's can't do it. So that's a perjury is a punishable offense.
We're close. We're all close to the same age, at least in the range. Where do you think the country has changed where religion doesn't matter, right? People actually look down for being religious. And again, people are said to be guilty before they have their day in court, and they get crucified for that. When do you think this all turned this way?
I think the moral fiber of our country, I think if you go back, I think it all started to end with the World War II people. I think that was probably one of the last generations that believed in the law. They believed in morals and ethics, and they look at all the men that went over there and fought when World War II broke out. They weren't recruited. They signed up and went over to fight for their country. How many people do you think today would go sign up and fight for their country compared to the numbers back then? I think our moral fiber has decayed. As even in my generation, I'm the next generation, born in 1960, from the people that were born in the 20s and 30s, the World War II crowd. And then I'm in between the World War II and the Vietnam, a little bit younger than the Vietnam people that are in their 70s. But I think there's been a downhill slide of our moral, fiber of our country. I think the internet had a big time negative effect, because you can, our kids today can go on here and see all this stuff that we were never, would have never even dreamed of, So, and then I think our government has gotten too big, where they're making too many decisions for us. They're wanting to our government is a disaster. It's just that's a truth. They're spending all this money, and it's a disaster. And then they keep on just getting bigger and bigger. I think that's a problem. And just like we just talked about, the politicalization of our Justice Department. You saw it full-fledged when Hillary Clinton, and who was the FBI director then, it just let her go before they even brought charges. He had already signed something saying she was going to be let free. It's just, when it's obvious that if you're an FBI director and this person is the same political views, you're going to get all these all these breaks, whereas the other side's not. That's the beginning of the end of our moral. And then all these the people of this country see that, then they lose faith in the people in these positions. Like FBI, they have a terrible name right now, and probably 95% of the people in the FBI are great people doing the right thing and what they're supposed to do. But the 5%, it's like one bad cop makes the whole police force look bad. But I think it's pathetic of what it's come to. I catch myself wanting to just be a hermit and not even hear it anymore.
Yeah.
Because it's so, some of the things you hear are just, you think, what are these people thinking? How do you come up with this conclusion if you've got a brain in your head? You know what I mean? And then that's why I try to back out of it. But I think our government's got too big. I think there's too many. Look at the media. Look at the media in with all this stuff. You've got all these channels that are basically advertising for the Democratic Party for free. How many billions of dollars worth of advertising do they get for free? Just people being on their side. You know what I mean? So it's crazy. It's when they've taken over and been given all this power, I don't have the answer, man. To tell you the truth, I'm all ears. If y'all have the answer, I would love to listen. And if you're right, I'll jump in with you. But it's so big, it's hard to. Where do you start? You know,
does the decline of our society begin with? And I've heard the '60s referred to as Pandora's box being opened many times. Does the '60s itself mark the beginning of the decline? Because somewhere in the middle lies the truth. Like, the hippies and stuff, their ideology was nice, but we all know it's not realistic. However, at the same time, Vietnam was not exactly the smartest thing to invest 10 years of a butcher shop.
no.
So, I mean, is that the beginning of the decline, the '60s, where questioning everything starts to come into play and eventually it's a trickle-down effect to where we are today?
I agree with that 100%. Like I just said about the World War II gang, by the time they got to be older and this younger crowd's coming in, like, I was born in '60, and I think questioning stuff is good, but then there's a fine line where it becomes, you're not questioning it, you're trying to make it reality, where it's not your opinion anymore. This is how I feel, and if you don't think the way I think, you're just wrong.
Right.
And I think that started a lot back then, and it's gotten worse. So the victimization in our country is just ridiculous. I mean, think about these people are wanting reparations. They want to be paid because they're a person in the 1840s and 30s and 1850s was a slave, and they want to. What is giving a person today money for your ancestor being a slave? What is that gonna solve?
Nothing. And you're right. But you know what, Brian? Just think about it. Just go back to what we spoke about, the Iron Claw movie. There's always got to be someone's fault. It's like it had to be Fritz's fault that the boys took their lives. The boys are responsible for themselves, right?
Exactly. They're grown men. Yeah, that's the pathetic. That's what really bothered me. I was angry when I first saw it, and then I'd have to reel myself in and say, all right, man, it's Hollywood. I know what Hollywood does.
I got to ask you a question. In the opening part of the movie where they're sitting at the breakfast table and he gives the boys his pecking order on which one he likes better. He says, what did he say? Kerry, you're on top, and then it's Kevin, then it's David and Mike. But that list can always change. Well, like, what was your reaction to that? I remember because my wife knew nothing about it. So when she heard that, she's like, what a piece of shit. She says it in a movie theater. And I'm like, oof, I cannot.
He never said that sitting at that table. Kevin and David knew that Kerry could get away with stuff that they couldn't. So if they did something wrong, they brought Kerry in the mix with them because they would get a lighter scolding. Literally. So they made Kerry the favorite. Fritz always loved Kerry because Kerry did so many things like Fritz. You know what I mean? He threw discus in high school and college like Fritz did, and just that superior body and the way he worked. Fritz loved that work ethic Kerry had, and but even when he was younger, he would let Kerry make it when he had to go off on David and Kevin. So
Kerry had a body that could equal Schwarzenegger. I mean, it was almost
he even
perfect.
Looked like Schwarzenegger when he was 20.
Yeah.
I got a picture of them.
Let me ask you this. You growing up with him and getting into high school, I mean, look, I know you're married now, but how often were you guys hooking up with women on a regular basis?
Every day. Every time we went somewhere, it wasn't how big the house was and how much money it was going to make, it's how much stuff you got. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, literally, the success of the trip was how many times you got laid and not the money. So, because you're going to make the money. So it was but I'm married. I didn't meet my wife until I was 52 years old. She knows. She laughs about all that. She knows about my history.
Can I tell you how unfair it is, though, Brian? You get Kerry Von Erich and I get Jimmy Farrow. Look at that. See what happens here?
Yeah, I was the only one cleaning up. Sorry, Mike.
All right, listen, Brian, couple of questions. I want you just to see if you could either debunk it or substantiate it. The passing of David. Was it what they claim it was, or what in your belief, or was it drugs?
David nearly did not go to Japan because of his stomach was bothering him. So the stomach deal was legit. All the boys knew that his stomach was hurting, and he nearly didn't go. They basically left it up to him, and he didn't want to miss the money and the trip, basically. But he was feeling bad. His stomach was hurting. I was there. I know I was there the day before he left, packing his bags and stuff. And he's like, "Ah, man, my stomach." So I know the what is it when you when they cut you open after you're dead? What's it called?
Or autopsy.
Autopsy. The autopsy said that he died of enteritis. So I don't know if the toxicology was released, and I've always just I know there's stories of Brody grabbing stuff and flushing it and all that. I've never talked to Brody about that, but I don't have the answer for it. I know what the autopsy said, and that's what I'll stick with.
All right. Dark side of the ring, even Kevin says it. When Chris Adams used to get mad, his eyes would glow red. Is that true?
Yeah, he was.
Really?
It's true? Chris was great when he was straight, but boy, when he's a typical limey from England, when they drink, a lot of them, they just can't hold their liquor at all. And he was that way. When he was liquored up, he was terrible. Well, he nearly got me killed over in Mexico. I don't know if y'all saw that, the Tale of the Territories, that deal where we did it. He nearly got me shot over there. I didn't know anything about him. I had just come back from Oregon, and we were in El Paso, and he said, "Hey, mate, you want to go across the border to Juarez?" I said, "Oh, yeah." We went over there, and we're in a bar. We're the only gringos in there, dude. I mean, literally. He's over there out cussing, talking about you effing Mexicans and all this shit, man. And I'm like, oh, my God. And then it went on, and these dudes were getting mad, and I see a dude reach for his gun over here. I was right by the back door, and I hauled ass out the back, and Chris got out of there. They're shooting. When I'm running through the parking lot, the dude's shooting his handgun, and it's hitting the cars around me. So, yeah, watch that. It's on that Tale of the Territories. I told the whole story.
Crazy.
And the next morning, he goes, "Oh, what happened over there, mate?" I said, "Oh, you nearly got me killed." Well, that night when he came back and came in the room, I hit him in the mouth and knocked him down. "What'd you do that for?" I said, "Dude, you got me killed. If we got killed over there and they took us out in the desert, no one would ever, my family would never know what happened to me." I said, "Dude, are you nuts?" I didn't know anything about him at the time. So, but I learned real quick. I never went out with him again. So,
yeah. So that's the last time you crossed the border with a British guy who can't hold his liquor.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I didn't know. Nice. So now I know.
Oh, you knew.
Well, they say F around and find out.
Yeah.
Mess around and find out. Yeah, I did.
We had a gentleman write us on our webpage a long story about Gino Hernandez, a breakdown of what actually happened to Gino. And look, we don't know anything, right? We hear stories all the time. In your opinion, was Gino an overdose, or do you think there was some funny business and that went on with that situation? Was he dealing drugs and got caught in a ring?
I don't know if I know he had in his toxicology report, he had cocaine in his system, but this is all secondhand news too. I didn't know I never did party with Gino at his house, never. And never, he was usually heel and I was baby face, so we didn't travel together, but super nice guy, great guy. But the stories that the people that were in the group, in that his clique, said that he may have gotten in too deep with some people, and there was some women over there that might have hot shotted him, but I can't confirm or deny that because I wasn't there, and I don't really know who knows the real story. If they're, you know what I mean? I don't know if anyone actually, if that's all speculation or not. So, because no one could ever find the girls that were over there. You know, they found him 3 days after he was already dead for 3 days, and one of the guys that went over there and found him, they opened the door and the smell hit him, and Gino was on the ground. He was already turned black. Wow. The only reason they knew it was him is because his hair was like this long, because they had did the deal at the Cotton Bowl. They shaved their heads and stuff. So they knew. They said he was laying there face down with a glass of orange juice, like dumped out, like he was getting up and going to the bathroom or something, you know. So, but to tell you the truth, I don't know the story. Mine would be pure speculation, like everybody else.
Well, did you ever hear of a guy named John Royal? He was a drug trafficker. All right. Well, we're gonna let that one go. I just thought it was interesting with all these stories. You never ended up getting, we don't know, right? And everybody tells you all these many, many stories, and you finally try to.
Well, everybody loves a juicy story, but unless you're there, I mean, or unless you're talking to somebody that was there, and even somebody that was there, a lot of times they'll doctor the story up. So who knows?
All right, man. Well, we're going to hit you with the Pharaoh's final question. First of all, thank you for joining us. As always, you are Absolutely. An icon, and I'm glad you're feeling better. Also, thank you we're going it old school. Our studio is still under reconstruction. It's not ready until March, so we're doing a little old school stuff. So, Jimmy, you want to hit our star with the Pharaoh's final question? And please make it a good one, will you?
Oh, I can feel the pressure already. Well, I have always wanted to know, and I feel like, and you knew the family very well, but I'm talking as a fan here. I always felt that David was the one of the four. I understand Kerry had the physical gifts and worked hard to make sure that he was the perfect package, which he was visually, absolutely. But I always felt that David was the one. What's your take on if you had to do a pecking order? Geez, I hate to put you in Fritz's allegedly imaginary spot in the movie, but who would have been your number one? David, Kerry? I mean, how do you feel about David? I felt that David was the total package because he could do anything. He could be a face, he could be a heel. He was great on the mic. He was great in the ring. I felt he was the most rounded Von Erich. What's your take?
You just said exactly what I was going to say. He could work anything. He could work heel or babyface. He could talk. He was in line to be the world champion when he died. You know what I mean? They had plans for David, and David knew the office. David was interested in the business side of the business, where he was going to come in with Fritz and take over the office. Kevin and Kerry, they just basically wanted to show up, do their deal, and go back home. But I agree that David would have been the total package that could work and talk, knew the business side, all of it. And I agree with you 100%. And as far as then a order of who's better, Kevin or Kerry, I think Kerry went farther. I think Kerry was over a little bit more than Kevin was, but they had their own styles, which there's a lot of people that just love Kevin. I think Kerry was the total package. Of course, he went on to the WWE and all that. So you would have to say he was the most successful one, as far as, But David would have gone farther.
Not to interrupt on the Pharaoh's final question, but can I ask you, could Kerry or should Kerry have had a longer run as NWA champion, or did he just flat out blow it and they had to take it from him?
Well, they basically, I think they just basically did that as a favor, because they had plans for David, and then to make it that big show at Texas Stadium and all that. I think Flair wanted a break, you know what I mean? He had been working for, man, that world champion's itinerary was brutal. And then Kerry, they had set up in the beginning where Kerry was going to have the belt for a certain amount of time, just 2 or 3 weeks, whatever it was, and then he's going to drop it in Japan. So I don't think it was a deal that Kerry showed up messed up. I didn't ever hear any stories from somebody that was there that he showed up messed up. Wouldn't surprise me, but right. I didn't ever hear of somebody that was actually there when he had the strap and he did anything wrong. So,
Brian, did you know what the plans were going to be if David had lived and won the world title? He wasn't looking at a 2 or 3 week reign, was he?
No, he was going to be. he was going to be in the mix of the world champion. That was when Harley Race was still, toward his end of his deal, and then David is going to come in. I think they're basically going to go back and forth with Flair and David more, and then have where he could wrestle Harley Race in Kansas City and St. Louis and all that, where Harley Race was over. So I think they kind of had a package with all three of them, but more so with David and Flair.
Brian, with all your talent, how come you never went further with your career, or how come you never really got into the WWE?
I was actually in 88 when I turned, or earlier, 86, 87 when I turned heel. And I had really just started, I've got a college degree in finance from the University of Texas, Arlington. The toll that business took on you. I broke my back in 1985, which a lot of people don't know, and my back was bothering me. And I came to a realization that I don't know if I really wanted to continue doing this and all the traveling and everything. So I made the decision to get out of the business, and I went to work in the car business as a finance director. So, and I'm glad I did in a way, because it's just so taxing on you, and I mean, the money was great, but I made good money in the car business, and I was home every night.
Smart move. I guess one last question. How come you feel Kerry's run in the WWE did not reach the heights that because again, the story that we hear is when Vince Jr. first took over, he was thinking about Dusty Rhodes as the champion. He went to Fritz and asked about bringing Kerry up there, and Fritz refused, and he ends up taking Hulk Hogan. Is there truth behind that? And then how come Kerry's run in the WWE wasn't successful, or as successful as it could have been?
Well, the world class was pumping when all that happened with, when WWE got hot. World class was already hot, So I think Kerry run into some sobriety problems when he got up there. I think he was showing up, with an intoxicant, whatever. And I think it got the Vince wasn't going to put up with that. You know what I mean? So I think that's exactly what I heard from the people that were there. He was showing up. He was gassed.
But was it true back in when Vince Jr. did take over? Did he go to Fritz and say, "Hey, I want your son up here. I want to make him the champion"?
I don't think. I think Fritz was. I don't think so. I don't think Vince ever talked to Fritz and said, "I want to make your son champion." There was too many other people that were big names to bring Kerry out of world class up there to do that, and I don't think that happened. I could be wrong, but Kerry was popular here, and it wasn't until world class took a dump that he went to WWF. So,
gotcha.
Well,
Brian, as always, want to thank you again. You're fantastic, good man. Glad you're healthy. Jimmy, you want to send us out, my friend?
You've been watching Monte and the Pharaoh with Brian Adias. Until next week, later.